Okay, here we are again, and now we're going to pick up with the gallery abominate, and we're going to look at how people have mistreated everything that we've just talked about. So how they've mistreated the pectoralis major muscles in their sculpts, drawings, etc. Okay, so the first one is this, which is obviously a rendition of Michelangelo's David, and I think that this won something called the Hardcore Modeling Challenge on one of the CG forums. And overall, it's a pretty good rendition, but what happens when people do these things without understanding the underlying anatomy is that you're just copying surface details that you notice. And what can happen is you can start to either not observe or not interpret what you've seen correctly, and that will give you false form on your models or your drawings. And this is why we study anatomy, because anatomy will give you 90% of what's always there, and then you're left with 10% that you have to observe on your own, which is 10% of how the general forms vary from person to person, right? And so this guy observed David, and what he missed, actually looking at the statue, is what we just talked about with the chest and the origin of the clavicular section. So hopefully you can look at this, and the first thing, it should jump out at you like an eyesore. I can't look at this without my eyes burning. We know, having looked at multiple images, that this section always inserts at the top of the clavicle, right? So this bar being carved out right here is very, very wrong. This actually needs to go all the way down like this. All right, so smooth over the entire front section, because David is fairly well developed, and so you don't see that. And that is the major problem with this that I'm going to bring it up on right now. Slightly smaller problem is what I think is a little bit of the lack of the S shape in the clavicle, because this looks pretty much like a straight bar. And another problem that is kind of related to this is if we look at the lateral border of the clavicular section, right? So what is a triangle here going out to its insertion on the humerus? Origin to insertion is always generally a pretty tight line, right? So no wayward wandering of the muscle fibers. And what we have here is a little dip like this, and then down, which is not going to be correct. I mean, that's kind of a false read of the form. This actually needs to go pulled fairly tight and down. So it fixes this little edge of the pecs. You can see that this is a little concave, when in this view it should actually be convex, like this, to give fullness to the chest muscles. Okay, and how it actually looks in life, you can see Michelangelo didn't miss this. His chest muscles go all the way up to the top, and this is pretty full out on this side too. For no other reason than what we talked about with the pectoralis minor going and filling in here, right? From here to here. Okay, first one, the gallery bomb. The second one, this has to do with the construction of the clavicle more than anything. And whenever possible, I try to give a comparison with something captured in life to give kind of concrete reference to help instruct how we could adapt the gallery abominate image. Okay, so in this instance, clavicle heads too close in the middle. Remember when we were going through the skeleton, I talked about 2 finger spaces between the heads of the clavicle, so it would really be here to here. This is actually how they sit into the manubrium. All right, so far too close in the middle, and then they go S-shaped out to the shoulder. I think we're missing a little bit of a pit there, and we're missing the insertion of the chest muscles up to the top to just smooth this over a little bit more. And then we have a distinct separation between this becoming quite bar-like, this interstitial, and this, which is, again, has chest muscles on it. Okay, so like especially right in there where it's very, very concave, that should be smoothed over. I also think probably the costal cartilage down here could be addressed a little better, and I'm not sure overall about proportions, but hey, it's a creature, you know, so anything can happen with a creature. That's generally people's defense, but the creature has 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 big teeth, ears, you know, and it has 5 fingers. It has, 4 main fingers, a thumb. It has everything that we have. So it's obviously using human anatomy. So a lot of this could be done quite a bit more accurately. Okay, enough of this one. Moving on. This was a gold mine for the Gallery Abominant avatar. There was a lot of problems with the figures in this. And I'll leave it at red because blue probably won't show up. But specifically on this view, I mean, what we're seeing is kind of, obviously they've adapted the anatomy of kind of the bony structure of the rib cage, which is fine. You're allowed to do that. I mean, you need to use anatomy as a tool, as kind of a sanity check for your own kind of imagination. But you don't want to violate general construction principles. And this comes down to the mechanics of how things function, right? And in this particular instance, what we're seeing is, okay, clavicle, that's fine. Little S shape, that's cool. I'm happy with that. But what we see is clavicular section going to its insertion on the outside of the humerus. I buy that, which is great, because what that allows you to do is it allows you to raise your arm to the front and across your body. So like you're going to put your front of your bicep, the bottom edge of your bicep, on your nose. That's what this does. It goes from insertion back to origin and pulls your arm this way. It pulls your arm up this way. What I have issue with on this, and I'll erase this pen for a second, is that these other 2 pectoral sections that we talked about, they don't actually make it out to the arm, right? These fibers seem to go under the body to the rib cage in the armpit, right? They don't span out to the humerus, to the outside of the humerus, which if we put it in place, would be something like this, right? They need to go out to this border here, right? And they need to span the gap to get all the way out to the outer arm. And if they don't span the gap, that means these muscles, this part of the muscle doesn't actually function, right? Biomechanically, it doesn't work because it doesn't span a joint. These fibers don't span across the shoulder joint to pull on the arm. The only part that does is this part. So that's cool, but these 2 lose. So this is an example of somebody freestyling the anatomy, but not really thinking about the mechanical consequences of just kind of making this up. Right, so that's that for Avatar. Here's what it looks like on a guy. Nearly the same pose, right? Average man happened to be striking the Avatar pose, and you can see here's the clavicular section going out. He's not flexing or anything, but this is what I'm talking about. You can see distinctly that these other 2 sections of the pectoral muscles, the sternal and the abdominal, definitely span out to the arm. Right, there's no ambiguity that they don't make it, right? Like there is there. Okay, enough on that one. I think this is the last one. And I've shown this in class a couple times, and it's a fantastic sculpt. You know, all of these things are in the Gallery Abominant because they're fantastically well done. It's just that they miss a thing or 2 about anatomy. So nobody should take offense if your image is in the Gallery Abominant. It's generally a very, very good sign because it's very accomplished. It's just that there's an instructive piece that's been missing. And a number of people in my courses have actually seen their work in the Gallery Abominant, and they've been okay with it. But if anybody listening right now has their work in here and wants it removed, please get in touch with me. I'm happy to do it. But I hope until then you can learn from and learn why it's in. Okay, so looking at this guy, the major anatomical flaw is obviously that he has a fishtail coming out of his body, right? That and that don't jive. But really, I was saying this in class, and somebody's like, well, Scott, you don't know that he actually has a fishtail. He may just be standing behind a fish, and the tail is coming up in front of him. He may not actually have a fishtail. And you know what? I think that's probably true. This could be a camera trick. The guy could be actually standing back here like this, and everything is fine. So that is not the reason that he's in the gallery abominant. He's in the gallery abominant because of something to do with his chest, which you might have expected. And hopefully you guys can look at this and think for yourselves for 1 minute, why would I put him in? And the major reason is that he's done a lot of indicating on these striations of chest fibers, but they don't actually support any of the construction that we know of the pectoral muscles, right, from origin to insertion. These all need to go fibers oriented in the direction of travel, right? And his are going transversely, but they need to go out towards the armpit. Like so. Okay. Guile, he has a similar construction problem, but not to do with striations, but more to do with trying to get his muscle from origin to insertion, which should be out here, right? We looked at this innumerable times now. They just don't make it. The clavicular section dives down to here, as near as we can tell. Sternal section, again, all kind of get lost in here. And it has to do probably with kind of proportional issues in this area, right? So construction of planes and how far back these shoulder muscles seem to sit relative to the chest. So really all we need to do is just give this a better, more evidence of spanning all the way out to the shoulder across this gap in here. Have one more look for yourselves to see. So construction failure right in there. Okay, and that is the last image from the gallery abominant for the chest. So I hope it's a little bit instructive to you seeing how people commonly do things incorrectly, regardless of experience. I mean, some very, very experienced people still do things incorrectly just for lack of knowledge, which is why I show these paintovers in the gallery abominant. It's not to disparage anybody's work, because in general it's really, really good work, but more to be very instructive about how you guys can avoid similar problems. Okay, so we're going to move on to the abdominals and obliques next, and I'll see you there. Thanks.